I had been living in the United States for a few months. I was learning English every day. I read books, watched TV, and listened to people talk. But speaking was still very hard for me. One day, I had to call the electric company. My bill was wrong, and I needed to fix it. I was nervous, but I had to do it. I dialed the number. When someone answered, I froze. My mind went blank. I wanted to say, "My bill is wrong," but I could only say, "Bill wrong." The person on the phone didn't understand. They asked me to repeat, but I struggled. My words came out slow and broken. "Money too much," I tried to say. The person seemed frustrated. They asked many questions, but I couldn't understand. I felt embarrassed and scared. Finally, they transferred me to someone else. This new person spoke slowly and clearly. I tried my best to explain. After some time, they understood, and they fixed my bill. When I hung up, I was tired and shaken. Speaking English on the phone was harder than I thought, but I did it. It wasn't easy, but I knew I had to keep trying. A few days after the phone call, I decided to go to a coffee shop. I wanted to practice my English more. I thought ordering a coffee would be a good start. I walked into the shop and stood in line. My heart was beating fast, just like on the phone. I looked at the menu and picked something easy, a black coffee. When it was my turn, the barista smiled at me. "What can I get for you today?" she asked. I took a deep breath and said, "1 black coffee, please." The words came out better than I expected. I felt a little bit proud. The barista nodded. "Would you like anything else?" she asked. But I didn't understand her at first. I stared at her, not sure what to say. She repeated, "Anything else?" I shook my head quickly. "No, thank you," I said. "Okay, that will be $2, she said, smiling again. I reached into my wallet, but I was nervous and dropped some coins. The barista waited patiently as I picked them up. I felt embarrassed, but I finally handed her the money. "Thank you," she said, and I smiled back, feeling a bit better. I waited for my coffee, thinking about how simple things were still hard for me, but I knew I had to keep trying. When the barista called my name, I took my coffee and sat down. As I sipped the coffee, I felt a small sense of victory. It was just a coffee, but to me, it was more than that. It was another step in learning, another step in getting better. The next day, I needed to go downtown. I had a doctor's appointment, and it was important not to be late. I had to take the bus, but I was still learning the routes. At the bus stop, I checked the sign. I thought I knew which bus to take. "This bus goes downtown?" The driver nodded and said something quickly, but I didn't understand. I hoped I was on the right bus, so I found a seat. As the bus moved, I watched the streets carefully. At first, everything looked familiar, but soon I noticed that the buildings were different. I started to worry. After a while, I saw a big sign. It was not downtown. I was in the wrong place. My heart sank. I didn't know where I was or how to get back. I wanted to ask for help, but I was too nervous to speak. The bus kept going, and I felt more and more lost. Finally, I decided to get off at the next stop. I walked to the front of the bus and asked the driver, "Where is downtown?" He looked at me with a frown and said, "You took the wrong bus. You need to go back." I felt embarrassed but thanked him. I got off the bus and stood on the sidewalk trying to figure out what to do. I took a deep breath and reminded myself that I could do this. I looked for another bus stop and checked the signs more carefully this time. I found the right bus and got on. This time when I asked the driver downtown, he smiled and said, "Yes, this bus goes downtown." I sat down, feeling a mix of relief and frustration. It had been a mistake, but I learned something important. Even when things go wrong, I have to keep trying. A week later, I had to go to a meeting at work. My boss had asked me to come, and I knew I needed to be there. but I was worried. The meeting would be in English, and I wasn't sure if I could understand everything. When I arrived, the room was full of people. Everyone was talking, and I felt nervous. I found a seat in the back and tried to listen. The meeting started, and my boss began to speak. He was talking about a new project. I understood some words, but many words were new to me. I tried to follow, but it was hard. As the meeting went on, I felt more and more lost. People around me were asking questions and giving ideas. I wanted to join in, but I was too afraid to speak. Then my boss looked at me. "Do you have any questions?" he asked. I froze. I didn't know what to say. My mind was blank, and I could feel everyone's eyes on me. I wanted to ask a question, but I wasn't sure how to say it in English. Finally, I took a deep breath and said, "Can you explain again, please?" My voice was quiet, but my boss smiled. "Of course," he said, and he repeated what he had said, this time more slowly. I understood a little better, and I nodded. The meeting continued, and I still felt nervous, but I was proud that I had asked for help. I knew I didn't understand everything, but I was trying, and that was what mattered. When the meeting ended, my boss came over to me. "You did well," he said. "It's not easy to learn a new language, but you're doing great. Keep asking questions." I smiled and thanked him. As I left the room, I felt a little more confident. Speaking up in the meeting had been hard, but I had done it, and I knew that with more practice, I would get better. A few months later, my family came to visit me. They were excited to see my new home, but they didn't speak English. I was happy to see them, but I was also worried. I knew I would have to help them with everything. On the first day, we went to a restaurant. The menu was in English, and my family couldn't read it. They looked at me, waiting for me to help. I felt nervous, but I knew I had to try. I explained the menu to them, one dish at a time. It was hard to find the right words, but I did my best. When the waiter came to take our order, I spoke for everyone. My family smiled and thanked me. I felt proud that I could help them. Later, we went to the park. My little brother wanted to play on the swings, but he didn't know how to ask. I took him to the swings and showed him how to say swing in English. He repeated the word and laughed. It was a small moment, but it made me happy. As the days passed, I realized how much I had learned. I was still making mistakes, but I could now do things that I couldn't before. I could help my family, order food, and ask questions at work. When it was time for my family to leave, they hugged me and said they were proud of me. I felt proud too. Learning English had been hard, but I was getting better every day. As I watched them drive away, I knew that there would still be challenges ahead, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I had learned that I could face them one step at a time.